Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Burgundy. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Burgundy is a red ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, what I do is I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Nibcreaper to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done, and we see this ink absolutely flees from the water. There's a tiny bit of pink left on the bottom as it works its way up towards some red at the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and it looks exactly the same. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference if I did not have the mark of the D at the top. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to hold up on paper, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it performs very well with it. I sort of expected it to run away or to bleed and feather, and it didn't. It performed incredibly well with the highlighter, so I wouldn't avoid this. I just wouldn't go over it 30 times with my highlighter. Water completely reactivates it, pulls most of that ink off the page, leaving only some of the pink behind. Pen flush is doing the exact same thing, leaving only the pink behind. But in both the water and the pen flush, I can see the dots of the Rhodia paper still there. Bleach completely removes it from the page, obliterating it, leaving just a white circle where the bleach was. But I anticipate it would only take water to clean this from your pen. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Burgundy has a viscosity of 2.12. It's getting close to the line. It's trying to be a faster ink, but it is not a wetter ink. It is normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples for the extra fine and medium nib done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those 6. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster Burgundy has an average dry time of 13 seconds. So just like its viscosity right on the edge of wet, this is right on the edge of being faster. But both are still normal. Fantastic. Let's take a look at the writing sample. I got this ink in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading going on, not in the 1.1. With the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We definitely get some color variation all over, where we get nice dark reds on the quick, lighter reds in the brown. So a lot of color variation with this particular ink. 6 seconds to dry. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, tons of shading the whole way through. 11 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubby, the extra fine might make us think we're not going to get as much shade. The medium lets us know exactly how much shade we're going to get. Now when I look at the smear test, the extra fine I don't know that I could recover, but the medium I think I could. Tomoe River. This spot that looks like bleeding happened on the scrubby where I'm putting it on stupid thick, and it looks like I scratched the page. Otherwise, we have no bleeding, and we have ghosting because it's Tomoe River. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread. It looks like it's getting little bits of halo. It looks like as it settles to dry out, you get little spots of haloing around. I see it around on the Burgundy, so that's pretty nice. But no shading in that writing. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. A definitely dark or lighter color than we got with the 1.1. 11 seconds to dry. Medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading, but darker than the extra fine and not as dark as the 1.1. Scrubby shows us we're not going to get any color variation in this ink, and the smear says you're not allowed to recover because you wrote on Tomoe River. Rhodia paper, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Not on this one. Extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some shading. Not in huge bits, not like I got on the first sample, but on this sample we do get some decent shading going on. 8 seconds to dry. Definitely a lighter tone than we had with the 1.1. Definitely a lighter tone than we get with the medium. The medium and the 1.1 as a tone look about the same. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no real shading. No real shading to speak of on here. It looks in the scrubby like we should. We don't. We have 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby looks in the extra fine like I should get a bunch of shading. And while there's maybe, no. And the medium says not really. Now the smear test tells us we're not really going to be recovering this. It's just, it sits on top of the page enough that when you smear it, it goes away. But this was a neat looking color. So in a neat looking color, sometimes I like to test with a different tone of paper. So I tested the Rhodia yellow pen. With that, we had no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, if we compare the tone, it actually looks a little bit lighter than on the white, which is odd, but it looks a little bit lighter. The 1.1 gives no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Minor spots of shading, not as much. That's a result of the yellow paper, just that it alters the tone of the color we're seeing. Even if it doesn't appear a lot, it can alter it in the shading part. 8 seconds to dry. The medium is definitely a darker tone of this red. It has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no real shading to speak of. We don't really get to have it here. 15 seconds to dry. Scrubby shows us we're not going to expect a whole lot of shading. The smear test, it looks like we could recover it according to the smear. So I went and I tested on Monokaki. If you can pronounce this correctly, please let me know in the comments. Monokaki. We had no bleeding. In the scrubby, it looked like it was getting ready to want to come through, but it didn't. We have no bleeding. We have some ghosting. It's a thinner paper. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but we do see some shading going on. In the quick, we get a bunch of shading. In the brown, we get some shading from the B. Is definitely darker than the rest of the than the ROW, but the N starts getting darker again. We see the shading in the Fox. 7 seconds to dry. Medium, a definitely darker tone. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no visible shading in the writing itself. 14 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, the extra fine shows us we're going to get some of that shading. The medium shows us no shade. Now, whether you could recover this if you smear it, that's an up to you. Maybe. Maybe. So if you look at that, that's a maybe. And then I went to Twisty Paper. The Twisty Paper gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading. 8 seconds to dry. Now the medium, definitely darker than the extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 13 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium, the extra fine looks like we would expect shading, but I'm not seeing it in the writing. But the scrubby looks like we would have it. The scrubby of the medium looks like I would have it, but I don't see it in the writing. So the scrubby lied. The scrubby lied about the shade. The smear, This is a toss-up. I don't think you would be able to recover this. If you smeared it while you were writing, I think it might be lost. And that's all I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Burgundy, I would prefer to find an ink that complements the color on the page. I've chosen Diamine Umber because it's a really nice green. It is not umber, but it is a very nice green ink. Before I give my opinions on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Robert Oster's Burgundy? I think it's a boring and unconventional color that draws me in somehow. I think when you use it in a flexi nib, you get more color variation and it becomes interesting. So it's weird because it can be dull in some cases and stand out beautiful in others. I think this is an ink that you need to find the right pen to get the properties to show through in the way you would like them to. Thanks for watching.